Today, I will be discussing special needs groups and disasters. Emergencies and disasters can be devastating for anyone affected. However, it can be particularly challenging for people with special needs. Starting off with children. Children are more vulnerable than adults in emergency situations. Disasters affect children differently than they do adults. Children may be away from their parents or accidentally separated during an emergency. Children's bodies are also different from adult bodies. They are more likely to get sick or severely injured. They breathe in more air per pound of body weight than adults do. They have thinner skin and more of it per pound of body weight, which means that they have a higher surface to mass ratio. They can have less fluid in their bodies, so fluid loss like dehydration or blood loss can have a bigger effect on a child. They are more likely to lose too much body heat. Additionally, children depend on help from adults in most emergencies. They do not fully understand how to keep themselves safe. Older children and adolescents many times take their cues from others around them. Younger children are at risk in a freeze in a situation, or they may even cry or scream. They may not have the capacity to explain what hurts or bothers them. They are more likely to get care that they need from their parents or the caregivers that are around them at the time, even to the point where laws require an adult to make medical decisions for a child. Lastly, the mental stress of a situation like a disaster is too much to bear for them. They feel less of a sense of control, they understand less about the actual situation, and they have fewer experiences bouncing back from hard situations because they are still so young. Regardless of your child's age, he or she may feel upset when others have strong emotions in an emergency. This is why it's important to keep families safe and healthy when an emergency happens. In the case of children, it's best to prepare an emergency kit. This can include a 3-day supply of necessities for each person in the family, such as food, medicine, water, games even, a flashlight, or special toys just to keep the children calm during an emergency. The second best thing is to make a plan to conduct family members, especially if you are not together when emergency strikes. Teach your child how to call 911 and to memorize important phone numbers like their parents. The best thing to do is even create a reunification plan as part of the family communication in order to reunite every member of the family. The next special needs group is blood disorders. Personal health preparedness and planning are important for everyone, but essential for people with bleeding disorders. People with bleeding disorders may experience excessive bleeding after an injury or trauma that can be caused by a disaster. Specifically, bleeding disorders such as hemophilia and von Willebrand disease are conditions in which the blood does not clot properly due to a lack of specific factors or proteins in their blood. As a result, people with bleeding disorders may experience excessive bleeding after an injury or trauma that can be caused by a disaster. In an emergency, their health and possibly their lives depend on easy access to proper care, treatments, products, prescriptions, and even personal needs. A bleed can happen at any time. It's important that people with a bleeding disorder prepare for their health with an emergency bag that contains the medicine and supplies that they need to manage or treat a bleed when it occurs. There are many times when a person is bleeding that is unable to treat him or herself. It's important to identify and prepare potential caregivers ahead of time for these situations. Now, a caregiver could be anyone like a family member, a friend, a neighbor, or a coworker. By sharing their diagnosis, as well as the instructions and directions they need on how to respond to this bleed, that could help save their life in an emergency. The CDC also makes this a huge priority by creating a CDC's Family Emergency Kit checklist to help develop an emergency kit for people with bleeding disorders. The link below can help you view that list. And lastly, people with disabilities. Emergencies and disasters can strike quickly and without warning, forcing people to quickly leave or be confined in their homes unexpectedly. For the millions of Americans who have disabilities, emergencies such as fires, floods, and acts of terrorism present a real challenge. Before creating an inclusive emergency preparedness and response plan, it is important to learn as much as possible about the people with disabilities in each state and identify their very specific needs. It is crucial to also educate and provide training not only to the people and the caregivers or families with the people with disabilities, but it's also pertinent to educate emergency planners, first responders, and other members of the community who play an important role in making sure that people with disabilities are included in emergency preparedness and response plans. You can view all resources I use for this oral presentation on the last slide. Thank you.